So anytime he can come home.
No, anytime he could cross over.
Wait a minute. I thought he was getting better.
Yeah, he was, but you know, he's 88. Just had his 88th birthday on the 20th. And you know, basically, from what we ascertain is that number one, he's tired of being in the hospital. He's tired on one hand, on the other hand, he's fighting. But in the meantime, the night before last, he had seizures. So little things are starting to happen that exemplifying deterioration. But in the meantime, his spirits, some days he's had good days and some days he doesn't. So it's in God's hands. So we just have to abide by that.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I don't know that we are expecting anyone else tonight. So we may as well go ahead and get started. Who did the welcome last time, Venita? Bill, you want to do the welcome?
I don't mind.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to the Revolutionary Love Leadership Series with Michelle Odom, Miss Venita, and me. I'm Bill Peters. Today we're going to be discussing, the Birmingham, which noted as the Birmingham Jail letter, which is a letter from the Birmingham Jail penned by Martin Luther King Jr. on April 16th, 1963. So that's going to be kind of intense, I believe, because of how we look and consider the stature of this man. So I'm honored to be here, and we welcome all of you here, to not only to participate live as we continue on, but also to review the videos that Miss Michelle Odom, has dissected in order for you to enjoy the program. But we always also welcome you to come on in here with us and join us in the discussion in the Revolutionary Love Leadership Series. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm Michelle Odom. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. And the book, of course, that we're reading is Blackmailed. Show you what that looks like. Published by Inner Child Press. We started reading it on December 18th, and we'll be here until April 22nd. So we're coming on down the road. And you can learn more about the Revolutionary Love Leadership Series on Google+, Facebook, YouTube.
Yep.
And Miss Venita?
Good evening. My name is Venita Walker, and I'm joining you from Carmel, Connecticut. Welcome.
All right. Let's see. I guess I'll go ahead and read the summary. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Uh-oh. Okay. Summary. Letter from a Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr., April 16, 1963. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail was written to clergy, black and white, with implications for all of us. The religious leaders criticized King for being in Birmingham, Alabama, to stage a direct action, for unwise and untimely activities, and for demonstrating a willingness to break the law. King responded to his clerical critics by affirming the interconnectedness of humanity, stating the issues to be attacked by direct action, highlighting the range of potential responses by the black community, teaching the strategy of nonviolence, lifting up the work of those white people who took great risks to support protest initiatives, and those black people who courageously fought for freedom, and severely criticizing the white moderate, church leaders, and local police. Ultimately, in this profound and beautifully written epistle, Dr. King offers hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. All right, Venita, you want to do part one, please?
Sure. Injustice Anywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. affirms the interconnectedness of humanity and argues for the right to address injustice wherever it occurs. He explains to his critics that he was in Birmingham by invitation of colleagues, and moreover, will be there anyway, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. He also used this famous letter to clarify his continuing faith in the rightness and ultimate success of the freedom quest. Question number one: do you believe humanity is tied in a single garment of destiny? Why or why not? Question number two: do you believe that most people see connection among human beings that ties our destiny together? If so, what do you think are the positive and negative aspects of having a tied destiny? If not, do you think it would be good to help people recognize our tied destiny, and how might you approach accomplishing that?
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
Well, of course, um, and I have to go back to the question because, there's something to say about both of them, I believe. Number one, without question, I do believe that humanity has a tied destiny. And the why is simply, atomic bombs, earthquakes, storms, global warming. It's nobody that's going to be excluded from whatever the earth does. So therefore we are all tied together. Number two, I'm not sure. I think that most people, it might be like a 50-50 thing, see human beings, as a tied destiny, because I think they, a lot of times people ignore the obvious, like I was saying, those points that I mentioned before, and embrace the differences, and we have a lot of people and a lot of demographics that, look more to the differences. And you look whether in America or all over the globe, people are embracing the differences. But there is a cadre of a few people that I know that realize the oneness of humanity and that we are all on the same ship, whether we like it or not. How do we get other people to recognize this? I don't think that we're that capable, not unless we push that button, and everybody's subject to global contamination, or there's one great, Yellowstone Park goes up and we get into a nuclear winter because of the ash across it. I don't think people will actually literally get it or either want to get it until something catastrophic happens.
Yeah, I think that's right. I wasn't living in New York when it happened, but it reminds me of the period after September 11th, and for longer than usual, but still brief period. There was this kind of sense of love going on in the city. People were recognizing our common connection. This question also reminds me of a video I saw about trees, and there's this woman that studies trees and studies forests, and she found that in every forest that she had studied, there was like a mother tree somewhere in there. And all of those trees, no matter what type it was, no matter how different it was in some way, when you got into the roots, connected back to this mother tree. And I think that's, I think that's what's going on with humanity. We can't always see the links so clearly, but they're there nonetheless. Welcome, Shareef. Who are you and where are you located?
I'm fine, thank you. How's everybody?
Good.
Good.
Hey, my brother.
What's going on?
You know, it's been a hectic day, usual Friday, you know. Usual Friday, gathering up the clan, taking them to the mosque, you know, masjid, you know, for the Friday programs. Planet Earth.
Well, welcome.
I'm in Florida, man. I'm down in the Tampa Bay area. I'm a Brooklynite. Don't you know I'm a Brooklynite? Come on.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I've been in Florida for quite some time now. You know, I've been held hostage. They're holding me hostage down here.
All right. Well, we are on questions 1 or 2. Venita, did you want to respond to either one of those?
Venita, yeah. How you doing, Venita?
Life is good. Shareef, how are you today?
Thank God, I'm okay.
Good.
Hanging in. Thank you.
Yes, I do believe that we're all tied in a single garment of destiny. I believe that just as an individual, what I do affects the next person, whether it's inadvertently or directly. A good example, since Michelle knows how I feel about children, I believe that if you lift one child, then you've lifted thousands. I believe if you let one child fall, then you've let thousands fall. So, yeah, I do believe that. And I also believe that most people do see that connection. I believe that there's so many other variables that are going on today, and there's always been variables, but I think we have a lot more variables where people see that we're tied, but they just don't know how to keep that connection together. But I do believe that people do see that. And I also believe that as an individual, and it starts at that level first, then you can help people to see those that don't see by your own actions. You may not capture 1 million people, but once again, I believe if you capture and hold up one, you hold up thousands, and those thousands may hold up one individually and hold up another 1,000. So I still have faith in humanity, and I think we'll make it through. Don't you, Bill?
No, absolutely. I can't think any other way.
Yeah, I'm not so sure though that I think most people see the connection. I probably agree more with Bill that it's more like 50-50, or I may even be the most pessimistic one on this account. Um, because I think that if we really saw the connection, it would be um, much harder for us to do some of the things that we do to each other. One of the perennial facts of humanity is about man's inhumanity to man. Um, and it's really incredible when you think about some of the things that human beings have done and continue to do to each other. And so those to me represent people that are disconnected from recognizing our interconnections. Um, and I also think when you recognize our interconnections, you want to push hard for other people to do well because you see a connection, and you believe that when other people are doing well, it will also reverberate, in your life or in the world. Um, and so, I 50-50 might be more. In terms of helping people recognize it, I do think at least at one level, um, it's something that you can help to instill in little children. When making them aware, um, uh, like I'm thinking about bullies when children are trying to act like bullies, and the parent has a conversation with them about, well, how would you feel? Helping to nurture empathy in young children.
May I say
Shareef,
one thing real quick?
Mm-hmm.
If I
May I
may,
say one thing?
with a comment.
Yeah,
I heard Bill first.
yeah. I was going to say, if I may say one thing real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to you, Love, I also realized that there are negative connections as well. Like that cadre of quote unquote, middle class Europeans that think that, all the blacks are on welfare and that's the cause of their problems. Or the Trumpaholics that are out there that think that we don't have jobs because of the Mexicans. So I see there's, and the blacks that think that we can't thrive because we think that the white man's foot is on our neck, especially with what we see in the news. But what we don't see in the news is how much we have our foot on our own necks. So I think there's a negative connotation to connections as well. It goes unspoken.
Yeah. Venita?
Well, I just, I believe it's probably more than 50% of the people because we have a big world. But once again, with anything else, you can have 10 people that recognize that, and it only takes one to almost feel like a million going against that. And I've seen that personally on personal levels. It just takes that one. Although you may have a room of 10 people, and you may have 8 that feel positive, 1 that doesn't know which way they're going to go. It just takes that one to throw in that wrench, and it just.
Well, yeah, and also, even in this speech, but in other places, King talks about the silence of his friends.
Yes.
And so it's great that you're out there loving on me, but I ain't feeling it.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. A lot of people I feel like they're interconnected, but they just fall back, or they don't know what to do with it, or they think they're powerless, or, I've seen that effect where everyone's just sitting there lethargic. And they need a fierce leader, like Donald Trump.
Shareef, did you want to address questions 1 or 2?
Let me see. Hang on a second.
Do you believe humanity is tied in a single garment of destiny?
Well, I mean, on that, what comes to mind on that is that, we don't live we don't live in a bubble. You know, we're social creatures, and we do impact on each other, whether we realize it or not. That's the nature of mankind. You know, we're here to do things collectively as well as individually, and it's a healthy thing to do that. And of course, the best scenario is that we do it in a congenial, respectful, amicable kind of way, which don't always happen, of course. Look at the condition of the world. That speaks volumes. But whether we like it or not, yes, we are connected. And a lot of people don't see it that way, that the things they do have a ripple effect on other human beings. We seem to be oblivious to that, or we ignore that fact, because it's not something that just screams in your face. It's kind of subtle many times. That reality doesn't happen right away. Perhaps it happens years down the road. So a lot of people are not aware of the manifestations of that ripple effect that we have on each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Bill. Would you read part 2, please? You're muted. Still muted.
Now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Part 2, Nonviolent Direct Action. B. Martin Luther King Jr. identified in an extremely moving passage some of the problems demanding a direct action response. In part, he wrote, "When you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will, drown your brothers and sisters at whim, when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brothers and sisters, when you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair." King also highlighted the range of potential responses by the black community from violence to complacency. He revealed how he sees himself as standing between the two extremes in the black community, a force of complacency and a few middle-class Negroes who have become insensitive to the problems of the masses, on the one hand, and the force of bitterness and hatred he believed was expressed in various black nationalist groups. King saw love and nonviolent protest as a more excellent way. He predicted that if nonviolent direct action was not accepted and supported, millions of Negroes will, out of frustration and despair, seek solace and security in black nationalist ideologies, which would inevitably lead to a frightening racial nightmare. Dr. King further used this instructive letter to teach about the strategy of nonviolence. He educated the religious leaders about the 4 basic steps of any nonviolent campaign. 1, collection of facts. 2, negotiation. 3, self-purification. And finally, direct action. The purpose of direct action to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored and open the door to negotiation. Privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily, and freedom must be demanded by the oppressed, counseled Reverend Dr. King, in expounding upon the urgency felt in the hearts of the people. Continuing the lesson, King defined just and unjust laws and explained the moral responsibility we have to break unjust laws, or those man-made codes that are out of harmony with the moral law. He also exposed the irrationality of seeing direct action as a precursor to violence and an extreme response to oppression.
Okay, thank you. And questions 3 and 4?
Okay, question 3. Martin Luther King was impatient with oppression, so much so he was compelled to take direct action to intervene in its path. This approach is quite contrary to New Age thinking, where proponents argue that we attract the things we focus on and counsel it is better to focus on love, peace, and harmony on the love, peace, and harmony we desire, as opposed to fighting those things to which we object. What do you think Dr. King would say about this New Age philosophy, and what do you say about it? Number 4, what do you think Dr. King saw black nationalism as a manifestation of bitterness and hatred? And do you see it that way as well? Do you believe love and nonviolent protests are better responses to oppression than complacency, indifference, or black nationalism? Why or why not?
Thank you. I know that was a long one. I apologize, but
No problem.
there was just
My
so
tongue
much in
started
this
getting
letter.
tired.
Anybody? 3 or 4? All right, I guess I'll start the ball. What would Dr. King say about this New Age philosophy? and what do I say about it? Well, I think Dr. King would say it's a crock of shit. I don't feel quite so harshly, but I do, I do get into a struggle around it when I think about oppressive conditions, and it starts to sound to me like this idea of the law of attraction, and what you focus on is what you attract. It starts to feel like, to me, another way of telling black people to just stop talking about it. We don't want to hear it anymore. And it feels like a nicer way of telling black people to shut the hell up, because now it's wrapped in a whole philosophy. So where does that take you?
I kind of, somewhat defer from that. And the reason I say that is because when we think in terms of the New Age philosophy, and I'm going to get a little mystic here. New Age philosophy is centered around the sign of Aquarius, which is the spirit being poured out upon the earth. Okay? And we actually see that happening now. More people are becoming more spiritual in their own ways, not religious, but spiritual, in their relations and their conversations and their communications with each other and also with the world. More people are into nature than they used to be 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. With that being said, the part about attraction is only a portion of the New Age mentality. A large portion of the New Age mentality is harmony, and getting in touch with yourself. Not only the self that's projected at you by others or by the institutions, but projected at you, having a relationship with yourself. Okay, and it's not so much. Yeah, we do attract, what we speak into life, but the New Age philosophy is talking about speaking different things into life instead of speaking the old paradigms back into life and maintaining the status quo. Okay, so when we talk about New Age philosophy, it's much more intense and in-depth, than we have defined it thus far. But the New Age philosophy, primarily, if we wanted to sum it up with one word, it would be harmony with creation. And that's probably part of the proponents of every single religion, in its ideology. Every single religion is talking about the harmony with the creation or creator, in one sense of the form. So, when I think in terms of New Age philosophy, I think King could embrace it. I'm pretty sure he would embrace it, because actually, whether it be Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, or Judaism, You know, what we're talking about is evolving and ascending beyond the status quo and the regimented, you know, doctrines and rote that has been practiced throughout the ages of modern day religion.
Okay, anybody else?
You noticed, I'm getting feedback. You getting feedback?
Yeah, I hear it. You might be able to turn down your speaker. That sometimes helps.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
I also hear you getting feedback, Michelle, as you speak. It echoes.
Okay.
Too.
I've turned it down. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that statement that Bill was reading in reference to. I got to back up. I'm trying to see where that was now. It was something about self-purification, right? In reference to the to successfully
right, the direct action process.
The process, right? And that resonates because we had touched on that somewhat in previous week, maybe last week, the week before. We were talking about one of the things that was the downfall of movements was the lack of that ingredient on the part of the players, involved. There were a lot of things happening behind the scenes that poisoned the movement, due to immoral lifestyles, and whatever shape and form they take. And we all know too well how about that. We don't have to be explicit, but we know. And all of that took place. I mean, regardless of what category it was. And at the same time, you're trying to mount some kind of virtuous, courageous attempt to seek freedom and justice and try to level an unlevel playing field. It's like an athlete going to fight, particularly like being a great boxing fan and having a long history with that in my life. There's some analogies there because a fighter has to train. He can't just step into a ring without training. He has to be in tip-top condition, mentally and physically. And he has to be not only physical, but he got to be cerebral. He has to be a thinker if he's to be successful. So you got to be on your best. You got to dot your I's and cross your T's when you embark on these kind of attempts to achieve something that doesn't exist, and you're up against great odds. So it takes a serious approach, and that's the way that resonated with me when he mentioned that. The other thing was he was talking about nationalism, and one of the problems with nationalism is nationalists tend to be exclusive in their worldview, whoever they are, whatever whatever ethnicity they come from or whatever tribe or nation that they prop up as the best,
Excuse me, Shareef, I don't mean to cut you off, but your time is up. Would you like to have more time?
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Yeah. So a lot of times they become exclusive in their worldview. And what that does is minimize the benefit of coalitions that like-minded people from across representation, across the rainbow of humanity. There's people from all persuasions that can step up and help your quest, your agenda. You never know who can be exceptional in that can really help. He don't have to look like you. He don't have to talk like you. So a lot of times we box ourselves in with a lot of these becoming exclusive or shot. We even shot. We cut off our nose to spite our face, so to speak, and don't even realize with that approach. I think when Martin Luther King was talking about nationalism, he also had that in mind, but he didn't articulate it that way. But that's the way it hit me. What do you think about that?
Anybody?
He saw the value of coalition. He saw the value of coalition.
Right, and even you know, last week we read The Ballad or the Bullet by Malcolm X, and of course he was proposing a black nationalist strategy at the same time that he was proposing um, getting more allies, you know, working with different kinds of people. And so for me, black nationalism does not have to be as King characterized it, as a manifestation of bitterness and hatred. Um, but, you know, again, you know, I think we have to always um, remember the times in which he was speaking and writing, and you know, and how his own you know, how all of our leaders, how their thinking evolved over time. King even talks in this letter about, you know, when we get into the part about how he feels about the church, and that this may be the time to move toward the inner spiritual world, because he was becoming frustrated himself with what was happening in the church. So, you know, so whatever we read, it's always a moment in time, and the person that wrote it themselves is subject to change. So, you know, there was a lot of tough talk going on back then, and you know, I see why he may have seen it as bitterness and hatred. Um, but that's not how I see black nationalism today.
Yeah. Um, you know, I agree with everybody, you know, and you know, their perspectives, you know, and but you know, I was just a couple of things. Number one, I think that the concept of nationalism is necessary, you know, because we need to get together in our own community. You know, we have so much. I mean, we got all kinds of sayings tagged to us like crabs in a barrel, and you know, just can't get along, and all kinds of stuff. And that's, I think, the priority for me personally is for us to come together within our own community. But I find it interesting, you know, with the tags, you know, and it just kind of hit me, you know, from a conscious point of view, that when you talk about, you know, black folks getting together, it's black nationalism. Okay. Jews have bar mitzvahs. You know, the Italians have their thing, the English have their thing, the Germans have their thing, the Irish have their thing, but no one ever tags them with Irish nationalism.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You know, and the funny thing is, all these other segments of society not only have their culture, but they have a home, you know, which they can claim as theirs. So if you're Irish, you know there's Ireland. If you're German, you know there's Germany. You know, here we're African Americans, and we are so mixed up and mixed in and whatever. Yeah, we can claim Africa because it's more of a political thing for us to claim Africa, because if you're, whether you're half white, half black, you're still black, you know. So we're assigned to Africa, you know, but, you know, any one of us, our heritage may be just as strong in another direction that has nothing to do with Africa, you know. But, you know, my thing is that every time we start talking about getting together, you know, or doing something within our community, not only are we targeted by the justice system and various other agencies, you know, our society at large, but, you know, we kind of, you know, as Shareef was saying, box ourselves in to think that it's something special, and it's really not something special. It should be something natural.
I agree.
Can I interject a thought on that just something I had omitted before that I wanted to include? Well, I think that even if you have coalition, and this what I'm about to say has been the reason why movements collapsed and became co-opted by people who didn't have their best interests at heart. The people who initiate the movement and have a particular deep-rooted interest in seeing it through to fruition, they always have to be at the helm to set the agenda and set the pace and set policy. Regardless who comes aboard with you in a coalition fashion, they have to at least take second place to those people. They have to be, they can take input in a very cordial, open-minded way for anything that comes along that benefits that movement from anybody. But they have to be in charge. You see, you look at the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, as well as movements like that, were co-opted by people who under the guise of being allies to that movement, used it as some kind of, they had some motive for self-grandizement. They used it as a stepping stone to further their own self-grandizement, like a political career, or to try to get into some other things, and actually had done that. There's people who got good cushy jobs coming off the civil rights movement. I'm not going to name names. I know some people in media that were with certain parts of the movement during the 60s, wound up with some big jobs behind that, and kept on stepping and didn't look back. So that's why you got to be in charge. You got the people who initiate the movement, who lay the groundwork for it, and create the agenda. They have to control that agenda. They have to be at the steering wheel, or else you will be co-opted. And that history bore that out.
Thank you. I guess the other part of question 4, do you believe love and nonviolent protests are better responses to oppression than complacency, indifference, or black nationalism? Why or why not? Well, I definitely think love and nonviolent protests are better than complacency or indifference. And I would say better than bitterness and hatred. Not necessarily better than black nationalism. And the why or why not, I guess, as much as I have read Dr. King, I kind of I do believe like love is the supreme value, and that's where we should be headed, and we should be trying to develop a world where we can actually love our enemies. But I think it's a very, very high goal for humanity to reach. And and I think, like, in terms of what Bill was saying about getting ourselves together first, that I think that just on a personal level, we know that if we're not loving ourselves properly, we're not in a position to love anybody else. You just can't do it. And so first and foremost, you have to figure out how to love yourself. And so I think that King was in that regard, really pushing everybody faster than they were ready to go, because as human beings, we haven't figured out on a widespread level how to love ourselves. If we accomplish that in some lifetime, then yeah, then let's see if we can figure out how to love our enemy. Um, so, so I don't know. Anybody?
That's so true, what you just said. And it's a dilemma that has not been figured out. I mean, it's been around for a long time. One of the, I call it, the psychosis of post-slavery. That's slavery and all the components that went along with that during and after are traumatic.
Yeah, we got a lot of healing to do.
Very, there's that PTSD, post-traumatic stress. It's like that,
Right. Let me ask this. As you were saying earlier, Michelle, that everything is relevant to the time that you're in. You were saying that earlier, that it's a snapshot and based on where you are at the moment that you write something. I just out of curiosity, in an amusing way, I kind of said to myself, suppose Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was still alive today, but nothing has changed. In other words, this is where we are today, the same place we are today, and he had been alive. Do you think he would have became an old Malcolm by now?
Yeah. I think about that a lot. What would you say?
Time to bear the arms, baby. You know what I mean? Like, I had enough of this peaceful stuff. 50 years of this crap, and it didn't work. So, because on one hand, in all honesty, it has to be a consideration that looms somewhere in the back of most black people's minds. That we must have, maybe perhaps now is time to physically respond. We talked last week about the fear factor that goes along with action. But I'm befuddled, as to about the whole King thing, how it applies today. Yes, idealistically, it's great idealistically, but what has transpired over those 50 some odd years, since his passing?
And even King, I'm always saying to Venita to remember that people in earlier times were much more naive than we are today. And, of course, today we have the advantage of 2020 hindsight. But, he even expresses through this letter a lot of disappointment in white people who weren't standing up and speaking out against injustice, and a lot of disappointment in the church leaders who weren't acting in a godlike way, and and he seemed to be genuinely, maybe it was a literary technique that he was using, but he seemed to be genuinely disappointed, which means that you really had an expectation, that people were going to act in a certain way. And I don't see many people today having those kind of lofty expectations of each other. Because we've seen too much.
Yeah.
And we're jaded in a lot of ways.
And at some point in time, someone's going to ask. I was going to say, at some point in time, someone's going to ask the question, when is enough?
Well, I was speaking to my son one evening, Clint, and Clint seems to think enough has been enough. He's 28 years old for a long time now. He reminded me, because he's more up on history right about now, that no oppressed group of people have convinced the people that are oppressing them that enough is enough without violence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wish he was here. He could explain to you more eloquently. Even with great nations before us, you know, the only way that folks seem to understand that you cannot do this to me anymore, although we like to take the kumbaya stance, it didn't work. It's always been through, you know, enough is enough. Either you're going to stop oppressing me or you're not going to be around to do this anymore. Because I'm sick.
Right.
So I just don't know if, you know, I'm a nonviolent person. I just don't know if it's working in 2016. You know, It's unfortunate. It's just so sad. But I don't know if it works today because, you know, folks are pushing more and more for violence, the oppressors. You know, let's walk around with our guns strewn across our shoulders. You got a whole bunch of folks on Capitol Hill standing out there talking about we're taking back our country. Not we're going to help everyone live in harmony. We're taking back our country. I don't know. And I think Martin Luther King would have, at that point, would have been a much more older man. He know he don't have a lot of time left, and Martin probably would have said, "Look, I got a few more minutes left. We tried the other way for the last 50 years. You know, that has not worked. We got to do what we have to do at this point." I don't believe that Martin Luther King's theory would work today. If he was here today,
it can't be arbitrary. It can't. No one position could be arbitrary. It has to fit this. It has to fit the situation. There's a time for both of those. There has to be a time. Look, you know, people don't like to hear this. There is a time for violence, and there's a time for nonviolence, and you have to know how and when to do either one. If you're capable of doing it, or you're incapable of doing it, you have to be realistic about that situation where you stand. But Bill, you know, jokingly and kind of sort of a way, Bill, when you refer to an old Malcolm, that's like an oxymoron because there ain't nobody, you know, these cats ain't gonna let no such thing happen as an old Malcolm, just like it didn't in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know,
well, yeah, and even King in this letter is saying, you know, y'all complaining because I'm trying to do a nonviolent direct action, but you better go on and let me do this.
See?
Because you don't know what's waiting for you on the other side.
He was trying to tell him this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to do the right thing, but if you don't allow me to do the right thing, then I'm going to have to go to plan B.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to
need to stop writing me these letters.
You know, he said that
you know, and also in that era, you had the Deacons of Defense. You know, you know, you had some people that that recognize that even as we're doing our best to be nonviolent, you know, we still have to take care of ourselves because we're not dealing with a rational or a fair element. You know, we're not like gentlemen on the, I don't know, the what do you call that when you fight with the swords and you got all those rules and stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're dealing with a violent group of people.
Yeah.
I mean, you
and at this point, Venita, they crazy too.
I didn't want to go there. I was trying to be diplomatic. But yes, it's a combination of things going on. You know. No.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I don't know. All right, well, let's, we're doing pretty good on time. Let's go on to point C. Who wants to read that one? Shareef, you want to read point C?
I just lost my link on that, and I'm trying to retrieve it, so I have to pass on that right now. I'm messing. I got it on my phone, so I'm trying to get it back.
Okay, I'll read it. A glove and a whip. In a brilliant display of revolutionary love with deep, insightful, and honest criticism, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. took the white moderate, white church leaders, and local police to task in his letter from a Birmingham jail. He expressed his grave disappointment with the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, and embraced the label of extremism they tried to put on him, likening it to the works of Jesus, Amos, Paul, and others. He was forthright in expressing his disappointment with the white church that failed to speak out against injustice, while affirming his love of the church that has too often fallen from being a thermostat that transformed the mores of society to a mere thermometer regarding popular opinion. I think that's supposed to be recording popular opinion. After bringing an end to practices like infanticide and gladiator contests, said King, the contemporary church is a weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. When King cuts you out, you have been cut out supremely.
You are feeling really small.
A weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. He warned the church of the potential of becoming irrelevant to modern concerns, while acknowledging those church leaders who were breaking away from the mold of conformity. MLK also condemned the brutality of the Birmingham police, whom his critics had praised. Equally cognizant of the good work being done by some, Dr. King extolled the sacrifices and commitment of the white people and white church leaders who did understand the deep groans and passionate yearning of the oppressed race, and took a moment to praise the sublime courage and discipline of the protesters. Question 5. Reverend Dr. King was clear about his love of the church, but suggested the time may have come to turn his faith to the inner spiritual church, the church within the church, as the true ecclesia and hope of the world. Do you think the modern church is mostly a thermostat or a thermometer? Why or why not? What are the strengths and weaknesses of turning away from organized religion? And question 6. Do you think it's important that we acknowledge good work when we see it? If so, what is the value of acknowledgement? And if not, why do you think acknowledgement is unnecessary? Anybody?
Well,
Modern church is mostly a thermostat or a thermometer. Why or why not?
A thermostat pumping up the volume?
Well, a thermostat actually regulates temperature. A thermometer measures it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a church goer. I stepped away from the church probably when I was 18 years old. In other words, a regular church belonging to denomination. However, something recently I saw during this election period when I saw a group of individual ministers get together and have a meeting with Donald Trump. So when I saw that image, not only did I know that they were not a thermostat, they had not measured anything, because why would you be meeting with them? But I also knew that they weren't controlling anything. And that's coming from a person, just that one instance today, I don't know what the church is doing anymore. I'm I'm kind of lost for that. Could you help me out, Bill?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that this part of the letter was very prophetic. And I'm going to read the passage again. He said he warned the church of the potential of becoming irrelevant to modern concerns while acknowledging those church leaders who were breaking away from the mold of conformity. So he warned about the church becoming ineffective, which to a large extent, and I'm like you, I'm not a churchgoer. I get asked all the time, when you come into church, it's not what I do. But because I don't see, I don't see the moral balance within the church, and that might be just because of what I see. I imagine there's a lot of churches that have a lot of moral balance, but I see, a lot of these televangelists, padding their pockets, lining their coffins with gold, and all that kind of stuff, and it just turned me off. Plus, they're not speaking to the things. I mean, I don't want to hear about welfare. I don't want to hear about people's problems and all that kind of stuff. We all have them. I want to hear about the things that, when I think about spirituality, things that are going to give me hope to make it another day, something to hold on to. And I think the church has failed in that respect. Not all of them, but a large majority. Enough that the millenniums are not going to church because of that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Do I think it's mostly a thermostat or a thermometer? Well, I guess I feel like Venita. I'm not sure what it is, but if those are the two choices, I would say thermometer. That it is measuring and reflecting popular opinion as opposed to molding it. And two things are in my head right now. One is the image of the prosperity gospel, of course, in that, just like I was saying earlier about the idea of loving your enemy being a big stretch for humanity. The idea of self-sacrifice and sharing, with those who have less is also not a popular message among Americans, at least it seems, these days. I think we've done better in the past, so I do think that is within human capability, as we are, but it's still, nobody's trying to be Mother Teresa, and so when church leaders started preaching about whatever it is they say, because I'm like y'all, I don't go to church, but whatever it is they say, like, you better get yours and get it now. Come on down the aisle. That seems to be a message that struck a chord with people, and now you got them in there in these mega churches passing out on the floor and carrying on, as they bring down their tithes. So that seems to be more of the function of a thermometer, reflecting what people want to hear, not shaping it. The other image that kind of goes through my head when I think about this, I don't know, I lost it.
So too much on this, Michelle. Talk about the church. Like
I know, it gets me upset.
Well, since you are frozen your train of thought, I had a bad experience many years ago, so I don't think the church has just turned to a thermometer overnight instead of a thermostat, and or actually been for the people. when my godmother died, which brought back memories because I just read an article pertaining to the same thing that happened to her. She had been a staunch member of the congregation of Greater Mount Olive AME Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for as long as I've been alive. Before she died, she was sick for a couple of years with Alzheimer's, going into Alzheimer's before she died. Do you know when I got ready to bury her, since she wanted a funeral, and that's what her thing was, that they refused to have a service for her in the main area of the church because she had not paid tithings for 2 years?
Wow.
And I just read an article in just day before yesterday, and it almost brought me to tears. The same thing happened, and she's been dead now for 32 years or more. A woman happened to her recently. Her mother had been a member of that church since they were children. She went to Alzheimer's and was no longer able to take care of herself, so she went into a facility, you know, the whole 10 yards. Her health was declining. She died, and the church refused to have her service in the church, period, because she had not paid tithing for the last year and a half. So this is the kind of thing, you know, I know, I'm sorry, it actually has a lot to do with the direction.
Well, it reminded me of what I was thinking about, actually. Yeah. Which was an image in my head of a church in Newark that it used to be a church that my father was at briefly. It's an old church, and it has one of those like silk stocking kind of reputations. But over the years, because so many people have walked away from church, as they were trying to figure out how to draw in a younger crowd and, a new crowd, there was a real change in the kind of music that they played. And the last time that I was at the church, I just remember seeing all these young people in the seats, with the music going on, and and they were basically like twerking and they were really throwing down, and I just remember thinking, wow. It's been a long time since I've been in a church.
Long time, Michelle.
So, I guess that's an example of I understand you're trying to bring people in. That's how church survives, with a membership. So how much do you have to reflect society in order to survive? And I'm sure that's a very difficult question for ministers and members and congregations to answer. And if we think about the strengths and weaknesses of turning away from organized religion, does anybody want to speak on that question?
Never felt better in my life. Best movie I ever made. As Bill said, it's more about spirituality, being spiritual, just being a human, connected to human, doing what you should be doing as a human for other people. I don't need a fierce leader in the church. All the respect to folks who do go to church. No, it's the best thing I ever did in my life. Yeah. Yes.
Anybody else?
Bill?
Shareef?
As far as organized religion is concerned, the ups and downs, the positives and the negatives, that's a blanket statement to just paint something as organized religion, because when you delve into it, go beneath the surface, just one layer, then one has to ask themselves, what actually is organized religion? Is Is it based on certain tenets that that particular persuasion has to follow that makes it what it is? There is certain tenets that identify it to be a certain persuasion, or is it something that men got together and created some kind of hierarchy, and even these individuals became like a deity, like a sub deity, that people put them on pedestals and make them more than what they are. There's a whole lot of things.
Well, not to get too deep with it. Since I wrote the question, then I guess I'll say what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, just as Venita just said, we are in our mid-50s. Bill is in his mid-60s. We are that generation that walked away from the traditional church in a way that no generation before us had done. And so those are the people that I'm talking about, and and where black folks are concerned. I don't know that there was a similar exodus from white churches, but I believe that there was. But certainly when you're talking about the black church, you're talking about the Baptists and the Methodists and, the black church.
Mm. Well, I really walked away. I'm a Muslim.
Mm-hmm. But see, that's not really walking away. That's walking another path.
No, I know, but
another religious path.
It's kind of lightheartedly. I put that kind of lightheartedly.
Okay.
I kind of think that there probably are still people, and I know there are still people, that are going to church that are in touch with their spirituality, and they've managed to get the organization and the who they are type part of their soul together, and it has become of one accord. For me personally, I can't speak for everybody else, and also for some of the people I've known and talked to, it's not so much the church itself failed, in an enigmatic sort of way, but the leadership of the church failed, in that they were not addressing the times. How many times do I have to hear that I was born in sin to understand that's your philosophy? I think I was born, I might have been born in a sinful world, but they're just not addressing the questions, the practical questions that people have been coming up with. Like, in other words, how many times did God create Eden? And explain to me why there's two creations. They're not addressing those hard questions. And it's primarily because they really don't know, and they've been taking it on faith or taking it on the things they're told and passing it on as rote. And younger people these days, and myself included, ask questions, and we want answers. We don't want it, well, that's the way it is, and whatever, or that's the word of God, or whatever the case may be. I don't know that it's word of God. I didn't see God write it. I assume that on my faith, but I do know historically that there was a lot of people with some pens and paper that put that stuff down, so, it's, all those questions are not necessarily addressed in your contemporary church. And to me, with King, I think he was addressing the hypocrisy of the church and its leaders, and also the parishioners, the followers. We do what we do all week long, then we go to church and think because we, put some money in instead of prayer and kneel down at the altar that, we can go on back to being a jerk the rest of the next week. So I don't know. I just think the church itself, as espoused by the leadership, has failed the people and the community.
Well, the key word follower, just that word follow. That right,
Yeah, but what are we following?
Right, that doesn't fit with my philosophy of life, period. So, and that's just
I can follow the tenets of I can follow the tenets of spirituality, but I can't follow any particular man. I can follow the words that were given that I feel that were inspired by a greater source. I can follow those teachings that I ascribe to. And
Right.
what I found, those teachings come from Hinduism, they come from Buddhism, they come from Islam, they come from Judaism, and they come from Christianity. And they come from some far out extremist types like Zoroastrian and various other, followings or doctrines. So I don't think that, when we talk about this, we look at King, he was perhaps, or he was exclusively Christian in his approach. But I think that, humanity has broadened beyond the Christianity. There's a great brotherhood. Some people are starting to recognize that it doesn't really matter what persuasion you are, that we are, as we were talking about earlier, still connected to each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I would just add to kind of wind up this section. I agree that our generation had a lot more questions that really the average church was probably not open to addressing, and that was kind of the zeitgeist of our time. But I do, even to this day, recognize that, not all preachers are the same, not all congregations are the same, and that I think we do ourselves a disservice when we paint all religious leaders and groups with a broad brush. But it does take some effort and energy to kind of discern, to figure out who is who.
Right.
But I do think, for example, I was reading a recent article about the Black Lives Matter movement and them not having the same kind of organizational ties that existed during the civil rights movement. And certainly not all churches, black or white, were supportive of the civil rights movement. But the church was the base for a lot of that activity. And so it's not the base of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so the article was just kind of looking at the implications of that. So I understand the reasons that our generation walked away from the church, but I don't think that we replaced the sort of organizational foundation anywhere else, and that, from a struggle perspective, that's a weakness.
Yeah, I agree.
On question 6, do you think it's important that we acknowledge the good work when we see it? I will say yes, I do. I often say on Facebook that I bring the gift of acknowledgement because I'm the one that will often hit the like button on stuff just to let people know that somebody sees you, somebody sees what you're doing, and and I think that that we don't. I remember people being much better about this in the past than I think we are in recent times. To me, it's like we almost want to render each other invisible. We want to make each other feel like you're nobody, I can't see you, and you ain't nothing. And there's just, to me, something very, very wrong about that. So, so I appreciated that King took a moment to acknowledge, because he was cussing folk out left and right in this letter, but I was glad that he took a moment to acknowledge the people that he recognized were doing the right thing. And I think it's important.
I don't know.
Anybody else?
I'm with you.
I agree. Although I think today, in order to acknowledge the good work of someone else or acknowledge anything good, you have to first feel good about yourself. So you probably see less acknowledgement today because a lot of folks aren't feeling good about them. It's like you
Yeah.
can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Although that person may be stuck on whatever they're stuck on or wherever they're stuck at,
Mhm.
they're so stuck so they can't acknowledge anything good.
Mhm. Mhm.
And years ago, with all the stress and the strain and the abuse and the do without, and I'm talking about food and shelter and everything else is going, people still could acknowledge.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And they had
Yeah.
some real heavy stuff going on.
Yeah.
But today it's like, if I'm not feeling good, you're not going to feel good.
Right.
If I'm feeling good, you're still not going to feel good.
Right.
You know, it's just a whole different
Because I
mentality.
need for you to feel bad in
Right.
order for me to feel good.
Good. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know. This is a whole different mentality today, and that's a fact. And I'm not just blanketing, just like I wouldn't blanket the church. I'm sure there are good leaders, ministers out there. Unfortunately, I only have so much time in the church, and I've been to a lot of denominations and a lot of churches, even to the mosque,
Mhm.
and I have not found a place where I belong. And I'm about dead.
Mhm.
That's how many of those places I just didn't feel in a good place being in.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, would you do me a favor? I have to step away for a second. Would you keep time for a second for me? I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick look at the love note. Was there anything in the day's reading that speaks to you or strikes you as an example of revolutionary love? If so, what was it? And do you see a way that revolutionary love might help to resolve some of the problems identified by Martin Luther King in this week's reading, such as fearfulness to stand for justice, conformity, indifference, complacency, racism, police brutality, bitterness and hatred, violence, or unjust laws? And if so, what might that look like? Anybody?
Just not to sidetrack. I just wanted to introduce my grandson over here, Rasul. This is Rasul here. Can you see him?
No. Oh, there he is.
Get in there.
Hi.
Uh,
Hi.
so, man,
That's one of
Nice
my
to
crew.
meet you.
He's embarrassed.
Don't be embarrassed.
I snatched him up.
All
well, you're
right.
holding the camera.
You're welcome to join us anytime.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, get out of here. Yeah, I know. I'll be right there, inshallah. Okay. Sorry about that. You got time for a piece?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Hey, time's slipping away over here.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a piece called Can You? Can You? It's in the book, Poetic Snacks.
Okay.
It's one of the munchies. Can you expect anything from human beings who are hot one minute, then the next colder than a deep freeze? What do you expect from weaklings? Do you really count on feelings? Clean hearts comprise the spiritual parts. Godly virtues would facilitate that. But how often do you make contact? You'd be more likely to find treasure on the sea bottom before you find virtue in Sodom. The time is coming near where sincerity in the earth will disappear, along with godly fear. Knowledge of substance will dry up. It won't hardly be around as the human race goes into a deep dumb down. Liars and thieves will be believed, the righteous treated as disease. Modesty ceasing to be, immorality a reality, immorality a reality. As the earth races towards calamity, clones in lockstep, blind, leading the blind over the cliff, heirs' eyes and minds rendered useless, because the deaf, the dumb, and the blind don't use it. That time is not drawing near. That time is here.
All right. Time is here. Thank you.
Snap, snap, snap.
Okay.
What about, we gotta hear something from my man here. I don't want to monopolize the blow segment.
Okay. Well, this piece is titled "Searching," and I penned it back in October of last year, and it was as a result of the consciousness that was brought upon me with my visit to Kosovo. Searching. In our conscious meandering, we ambled down uncertain paths, gathering data, storing it for future application. Are we searching for answers or just reasons that we can utilize to justify our blinded walkings through our accepted realities? I once questioned, and when no viable answers were proffered, I fell into that abysmal hole of wondering. I thought about what other things could be known. Better yet, what is it I can verify, validate as an absolute that will not wash away with the rising and receding tides? I am still stuck back here, searching. Perhaps I am seeking familiarity. Perhaps not, for I have already forsook self many times before. How do you recognize truth when it is cloaked in a fabricated raiment, spawned from the unknown darkness that never appears as it is? In the meantime, I am still searching. The question is, for what?
Well, all right. Thank you. But listen, I'm not going to let y'all escape the love note that easily. Bill called me up, Shareef. He said y'all didn't like spending a whole lot of time on rhetoric without focusing on solving problems. So I restructured the love note so that we could focus, at least consciously focus, a few minutes of our time on looking at solutions. And we put it off last week, so I do not want to put it off this week, and I'm not going to even be the first person to answer. Who got a solution? Bill, Shareef.
Okay, I think the solutions are something that we're all too aware of. And I think the first thing is, I think that every person that I know, of color, African American person I know, acknowledges that we have to come together and start working together. I think that we understand that the question is getting there. We have been, so indoctrinated to have or expect a leader to walk down that road ahead of us. But I think things have changed dramatically. Like, we have lost our faith and trust in leaders, and it's time for us to self-develop, and find that we're all heading in the same direction.
Yeah, I think that's one of the positive aspects of the Black Lives Matter, that they've got this sort of decentralized approach, Okay. Shareef, what solutions do you see to the problems Martin King identified?
Overcoming the weaknesses in ourselves, and in spite of ourselves, not because of ourselves. We overcome through a collective effort. And that has been the hardest thing to sustain. Coming together in a collective effort that is valuable and sustainable, and attain some kind of longevity, because that's what it would take. We haven't seen that in our era. We haven't seen that. There's very few times in history that actually has been attained by mankind, period. And they run their course and they peter out, and they're succeeded by some other things, some other agendas. These things are played and replayed throughout the history of mankind. So solution that's a loaded question. We sitting here, we ain't gonna come up with no solution, right now, but we have ideas about how you can approach something that can lead to a solution. But it all comes down to cooperation, because you can't do it by yourself. And when I say by yourself, not just an individual, but even your group, say whatever group. It got to be groups that come together. There has to be some degree of coalition. But in that mix has to be respect for one another. And we have to learn about each other. We have to learn about each other's differences and respect those differences and talk things out. That has not occurred in such a way where it had an impact in a positive way to turn things around. And we have to keep corruption out of it, and that has not occurred. We have to keep morality out of that mix, and that has not occurred. And all of these things act as counterproductive destroyers of whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say morality, and you bring that up. You bring that up a lot, with good reason. And as I'm reading this letter from a Birmingham jail, as I have thought about many times before, if we don't have religion as a foundation, and if we don't have morality as a foundation, then, where really do we get the insight and the will to do, what we might call right things? I mean, if you read King's letter, what he's talking about is doing what Christ wanted us to do. So, if we're not trying to follow Christ.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to take leave, so I'm going to ask.
Okay.
I'm going to bid everybody a blessed weekend, and I'm going to have to leave now.
All right. Good night.
Okay, brother. Talk to you soon.
Have a blessed weekend. Take care. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So, I'm not trying to have a big philosophical question after 8 o'clock, but y'all know what I'm saying.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
One accord.
I mean, when I was a young person, I used to believe that, we can still have value even if we don't tie it to morality. But I'm not so sure that we're smart enough to figure out how to do that.
Well, when we talk about morality, just to interject this, as we were talking about not broad-stroking religion, but we do see that within some confines, of religious leadership, that's what has went wrong. The morality has kind of slipped, out of context, and consequently, by and large, people in mass have gotten to the point where they don't trust the religious leaders anymore. I'm not saying, well, I know in Christianity, let me speak for Christianity, okay? I can't speak for other religions. But as far as Christianity's, whatever church I go to, the first thing I'm doing, I'm listening to what that person's saying just to see what kind of personality they got behind it, and what they're talking about. And if they're talking about something relevant to my soul, like I don't want to go to church for current events. I can read that online, but, and I don't want to be preached at, I want to be spiritually nourished, and that's my thing. And I don't get that at church. Or the last few churches I went to, I haven't gotten that.
And I'm sure it's hard as a minister to please all the people all the time.
Oh yeah, well, I
It's,
don't think his job should be pleasing the people. His job should not be pleasing. His job should be communicating spiritually, and the people eat if they wish to eat or don't if they don't. But I kind of think, I used to have this thing, Logan, real quick, and I know you can appreciate this, your father being who he was. Like when a pastor has to spend all week preparing his sermon, and you're saying it's from God. Well, my belief has always been that you don't need to prepare nothing. You can't prepare God's words. So when you get up in that pulpit with no script whatsoever, if you're pure, God will speak through you. He doesn't need us and our intelligence to talk about things. He'll speak through you. And that's been my beef, about organizing, and leaders.
Well, all right. As always, this has been wonderful. And Venita, any final thoughts?
I believe that until we stop operating off of our egos, which has been a downfall of man since the beginning of time, laymen, ministers included, we won't be able to come together. So we need to work on our egos first, start to work in an egoless state. And that's why I believe that morality has fallen by the wayside, because man is constantly operating in ego. Why the values have fallen to the side, because man is constantly, operating in ego. When I saw that group of black ministers meeting with Donald Trump, what else could there be but ego? Because there's nothing in the world that I can remotely think of that you could be discussing with that man about anything, for any reason. So unless we start to do that, and hopefully we'll realize, those that want to know, or those that want to know different and to do different, we'll continue to go around in circles. We have to start operating off ego, because it's killing us. It's killing us. It's separating us. So we can't come together as individuals. We can't come together as groups, because the ego is just fermenting.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
Thank you. And I would say, I don't know why that's happening. I would say the love, though, that the whole letter is dripping with revolutionary love, and the love that Dr. King felt for the church, the love he felt for humanity. It's just all over the letter, and and the fact that he wrote it, was to me an effort to try to work things out. We can work things out. So anyway, it's 8:10, so let's call it a night. And I will see everybody next week. I think we have Angela Davis is up next week.
Yeah.
So that should be fun. And reading our story together. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Michelle. Good night,
Good night,
Bill.
everybody. Good night, ladies. Good night.
Bye.